Hi guys! So today's video will be a little bit different one. First of all, I think for many of you this is the first time you see me on camera, so hi, I hope you're not traumatized. So I've gotten asked a few times how I film and edit my bullet journal and art videos. So I thought it would be easier to just make a video like this explaining the whole process. So if anyone is asking that in the future, I can just point them to this video. So there will be kind of 3 parts in this video. We're gonna start by talking about the filming setup and all the gear I'm using. Then secondly, we're gonna talk about the actual filming process. And lastly, I'm briefly gonna walk you through how I edit these videos. So we have a lot to talk about. I know this video will be pretty long, so let's just get started. Okay, so let's get started with all my gear and tools and gadgets. And I feel like I have to give you a little bit of disclaimer about this. I've been filming videos on YouTube for years in this point, so obviously in that time I've made some upgrades. So I don't know if this will be the most beginner friendly setup, but I will try to give you as many beginner friendly tips throughout this video, and also just some tips I've learned on the way. But now that that's out of the way, let's start by talking about the cameras. So I'm using 2 cameras for filming these videos. The newer one is my Canon 77D. This is the one I use for all the top down shots you see in the videos. What I like about this camera is that it has a flip screen. It makes it much easier for me while I'm filming the videos because I can just use this as my viewfinder and I don't need to set up another viewfinder anywhere. And the second camera is what I use for all the other angles in the videos. And this is my old camera, which is the Canon 100D. And I think the camera itself doesn't need to be that fancy. In my opinion, much more important things while filming are, well, first of all, the lighting, and second of all, the camera lens you're using. So the lens I use in this one is pretty expensive one. Trust me, you don't need to have this lens for this purpose. I like to take photos as well, and this is just a very good lens overall. I'll leave you all the details on the screen somewhere, and I will also list everything I'm using to the description. But anyways, for the top down shots, I think the most important thing is that you have a zoom lens. It's just much easier to film these parts when you can zoom with the actual objective and you don't need to start messing with the camera stand. And the way I film these top-down shots is by just using a tripod that I have leaning against my wall or window in my case. I know it doesn't look very sturdy, but it has worked well for me this far. My tripods are nothing fancy. I guess this was like roughly $40 or $50. I think some important things you should check before buying a tripod is, first of all, how much weight you can put on that, especially if you're using a bigger camera or a lens. Then second thing is that can you turn it completely facing down, so how much the top thing rotates. I have 2 of them, so this is what I use for the main camera, and then I use the other tripod for creating some different angles, or if I want to film something very close to the page, I actually just use one of these, which is how you can get really close to your notebook. Then the lens I use for the other camera is actually one of my favorites. I guess this is technically a cheap macro lens, and what I like about this lens is that you can get super close to the object, and with the 2.8 focal length, you can create that beautiful blurry background effect that I use quite a lot in my videos, but we'll talk more about that in the filming part. Before that, let's just walk through everything else I'm using. So I have 2 LED studio lights. These are one of those cheap sets you can buy from Amazon or somewhere. They definitely feel a little bit cheap. They are pretty shaky and annoying, but what I like about these lights is that you can adjust the color temperature and also the color brightness. And as I mentioned before, I think the lighting is probably the most important thing. It's one of those things that even if you have super expensive camera and lens, it doesn't really do much if you have bad lighting. I actually film all my videos right here, so it's directly in front of a window, so I get a lot of light from here, and then I kind of point my lights from behind, so I get as even lighting to this surface as I possibly can. Sometimes I film during the night, but I try to avoid that because it just creates a little bit more shadows to the footage, and then you have to keep adjusting the lighting and everything in the editing part. But after that, there are just some small things you need, like backup camera batteries. I personally have my extra batteries charging at all times because I never want to run into that situation where I want to start filming but my battery is empty. So I have extra batteries for both of my cameras, and I've just bought those fake batteries you find from Amazon or somewhere, like the copies of Canon batteries, and I've never had any problems with them. And the last thing you need are some memory cards. I like to use pretty big memory cards because my videos take a lot of time to film. One of my bullet journaling videos usually has somewhere between 10 to 15 hours of footage, so that amount of full HD footage takes quite a lot of space. So yeah, I just bought some big memory cards so I never run out of space. Then the last piece of gear is the microphone I use for the voiceovers. I'm actually using it right now, so I hope this doesn't mess with the audio of the video too much. This is the one I use. I used to have a much cheaper microphone, and now if I ever look back to my old videos, the audio quality is the first thing I can notice. It was pretty bad. But yeah, I've been super happy with this microphone. It's great if you're filming a lot of voiceover stuff. But I guess that was pretty much all about the filming gear. I know this was a lot, but as I mentioned in the beginning, you don't need to have all of this to get started. I think nowadays you can get so far with just filming with your phone, honestly. But then let's finally move on to the actual filming process. So as I already mentioned, I actually film right here in front of a window for the maximum amount of natural lighting. And then what I personally think is pretty important, especially for bullet journal or art type of videos, is the background and the overall aesthetic of your filming space. I used to just use my white desk as the background, but recently I've been kind of experimenting with these different backdrops. I bought many of these from the brand called Ink and Elm. These are pretty expensive, I'm not gonna lie, especially if you have to pay for the shipping, but they do have so many beautiful options, and also the quality is very good. I also use these when I take photos for my shop and for Instagram, so I think buying one or two might be worth it, especially if you don't like the look of your desk. But other than that, I just like to use a lot of plants. I use dry leaves and flowers in the videos a lot, and then just some random objects like washi tapes, maybe some clips or stuff like that. I personally try to keep the filming space pretty organized. I don't like it to be too cluttered, but I think adding at least a little bit of something to the edges of the frame or to the background of the shots definitely makes it a little bit more visually pleasing. I also like to change the look and aesthetic according to the seasons of the year. So now I'm using this brown background and a lot of dry leaves like this. The good thing about this is that you can use them for a long time. I think I've had these over a year. They've changed the color a little bit, but otherwise they still do pretty well. Then another important thing about the filming, in my opinion, is changing the camera angles as much as possible. I think especially with bullet journaling content, the video might get a little bit boring if you just use the same camera angle for too long. So if you're using top-down shots, at least zoom in a little bit, or maybe change the angle of the notebook. I always try to keep the notebook in same place, so I'm personally not rotating stuff while I'm filming. It was pretty difficult to get used to in the beginning, being very careful to keep everything in place, but now I'm just used to it. I know filming different angles is such a pain in the butt if you only have one camera. I used to have that problem before I bought my new camera as well. And then I try to include a few closer shots or some interesting ones where the camera is kind of moving a little bit. All of that is done in the editing program, but still I think different shots like that just makes the videos more interesting and entertaining to watch. And that's what you want in YouTube, because the watch time is very important. And then, as I mentioned in the camera part, I like to use that blurry background effect quite a lot in my videos. You can get that by using a small f value in your camera, and you can also get that by going very close to the object. So for example, I sometimes like to include some shots where I go very close to the page, and then you can see how the background looks kind of blurry. And I think it just looks very nice and somehow a little bit more professional, I guess. And then if you're wondering why all my angle shots are from the left side, it's simply because I'm right-handed, so if I do it from the right side, my hand is basically blocking everything I'm trying to draw, and it just looks a little bit awkward, which is why I only use the left side. But yeah, I don't know what else to tell you about this part. One thing that might be a little bit surprising for many of you is that I never film the bullet journaling videos in one day. I try to film like maximum 3 hours a day because I just personally end up sitting in all weird postures when I'm trying to not move anything. So I always film the videos over the course of many days, and then I just put everything together in the editing part and no one will know. Sometimes I don't even film the pages in the right order, especially if there is a bigger painting or drawing or something. I might procrastinate by just finishing an easier page first, and then I just use some cheating tricks in the editing part. But then after filming all the progress part, the last thing to do is recording the voiceover. For me, this is the part that I absolutely hate the most. I really struggle at explaining things, so I actually write a whole script for the voiceovers from word to word. That's a little bit embarrassing to admit, I'm not gonna lie, but I know other people are doing it too, so it's just what it is. Writing the voiceover definitely takes a long time for me, and I try to do that always after filming, so I don't have to write the whole thing in one day. My voiceovers are like 5 to 6 pages in Word, so it's a lot to do in one go, especially if you hate doing it. And after that, I just read everything and record to my mic. Even in the recording process, I have to say every sentence like 2 or 3 times to get it right. I try to make the voiceovers as fluent as possible. And also you have to consider your tone of voice a little bit, and not using the same words over and over. So writing everything beforehand is definitely the way to go for me. But after that, everything is finally filmed, the voiceover is recorded, and now we can jump to the editing process. I will go through the editing part pretty quickly. This won't be an editing tutorial by any means because we will be here for 500 years, and I'm also not very good at editing, so I very often just use the basic tools. If you want to find some actual editing tips, I would recommend just searching from YouTube. I use Final Cut Pro for the editing. I used to use Adobe Premiere Pro, but if you make videos for a long time, that software actually gets pretty expensive. So if you happen to have a Mac computer, I definitely think Final Cut is the way to go. So I usually start by creating a new library for all my monthly videos, and then I have the Plan With Me video as one of the events inside of the library, and then in the event you want to create your project. So you want to use full HD as much as possible, and then I use 30 frames per second for my videos. But then let's just start to go through the editing process from start to finish. So I usually start everything by choosing the background music. I find all my background music from Epidemic Sound. I think it's a very good solution if you do videos consistently. And I usually choose the background music based on the theme of the video. So for example, in the previous September Plan With Me video, I wanted to create kind of a cozy foresty vibe for the video. So I went with some guitar instrumental music for that one. But after that, I usually start to clip together the voiceover part. So even though we did all the preparing, we wrote everything from word to word, I still have to edit the voiceover quite a lot. So all these cuts mean that I messed up in the recording part. Then after the voiceover, I usually start to clip together all the recorded footage from start to finish. So I start to combine different clips from all the camera angles. And if I didn't record something in order, this is the part where I just move stuff around and make sure that everything looks nice from start to finish. I edit out a lot of moments where I just fix something on the filming space, or when I'm reaching for my pens or mixing my paints. All of that is edited out, so I just have all the important parts in the video. And as you can see here, all the top-down footage I take with my main camera is upside down. So I just go over each of these clips and rotate them. But then after I have all the footage clipped together, I start to speed things up and make some final edits. So there is pretty much nothing in my videos in the original speed, but I actually changed the pace a lot in the videos. So I don't just use one speed for the whole part, because I feel like there are some moments where speeding things up too much makes the videos very difficult to watch. So I kind of start new parts from a little bit slower pace, and then if there is a very long painting part or something like that, I might speed it up much more. And then when you just keep editing more and more videos, you kind of find your own style and workflow for it. And then usually as the very last step, when everything is finally put together, I spend a little bit time tweaking the colors in the videos. But this is also something that you will just learn by doing different things. There's no one right way to do any of this. And also you might have a very different visual style you want for your videos. So that's why I think you will find your style by just playing around with stuff like this. Then one thing I want to show you guys is something I use a lot when I record something while holding the camera. So if you film something by hand, it might look a little bit shaky, but there's actually a very simple way to correct that in Final Cut Pro at least, which is the stabilization setting that you can find for each clip. So whenever the footage looks shaky and I want it to be a little bit more smooth, I just put this one on, and after a while it will usually look much better. But I think that's pretty much all for the editing I do for the videos. As you can imagine, the editing takes quite a long time for me. I usually try to reserve 2 days just for the editing part. And I think especially the editing part is the one that really surprised me when I first started to do videos. It definitely takes much longer than I ever imagined. But I guess that's finally it. I know this video was probably very long and filled with all kinds of information, but I do hope it was helpful for any of you who are trying to look for new tips, or if you want to start a bullet journal or art channel on YouTube. If I forgot something, please just ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!